transition, guys, to the Caps. Another team that's scuffling right now. Had lost four in a row. Two of them, though, they got points for. One a shootout, one in overtime. They're currently in third place. They're in the playoffs if the season ended today, but they'd be the 8th seed, Dan. How important is this stretch? They've got 17 games until the Winter Olympics break, and then they have the break for the Olympics. How important is this stretch for the Caps?
I mean, I think it's important for obvious reasons. I mean, whatever, 17 games is a huge part of the season. Of course it's going to be important, but I think one of the big parts of it is that they're going to have a lot of games on the road coming up. And, you know, they need to get points on the road. They need to win games on the road. And I think that they need to beat some of the better opponents. Their strength of schedule thus far has been one of the weaker ones in the NHL. You know, I don't know what extent that matters, but there's this
RPI.
There's this issue that we've talked about too before, that so many of their points have come in shootouts and these overtime wins, which is sort of less of a mark of a good team than regulation wins would be. So I think they need to prove to themselves they're a good team and a good team that can win on the road. I think it's important.
Mike?
My concern would be that Adam Oates has tethered his ship to Alex Ovechkin so much, and in a good way, because he's definitely tapped into the best things he can do and turned into a really productive scorer. But I'm more worried about what he has as a roster. And I think when you say that these next few games before the Olympic break are important, I believe they're more important for George McPhee than anybody. George McPhee, it's not widely publicized, but this is he is not under contract next year. He has to win some. I believe he has to get that team to a couple rounds this year. And I believe that if he doesn't trade for some capable defensemen and get rid of some of the AHL guys that are great guys and getting good experience, but they're not defensemen, they're going to take you to the next round in the playoffs. If he doesn't trade for those guys, whether it's dangling a goalie or somebody else out there, he's going to find himself on another team next year. I would not be shocked if George McPhee is gone after this year, if that roster is comprised like it is and barely misses the playoffs and or gets knocked out in a blowout of the first round.
LeVar, do you think it's time to be worried that this team could miss the playoffs, given where they stand right now? There's a couple teams right behind them with 45 points.
Historically speaking, no. If we're looking at what they do historically, when the games start to really matter, they come on and they respond.
Like last year, for
sure.
So,
I mean, they've done it a few times. I will say this. My biggest observation of the Capitals has been they are a finesse team. And we've always watched them succumb to more physical teams. And I mean, we're talking about McPhee, and we've talked about the different coaches that have come in and have coached this team. I just find it interesting that we look at a team that they're about scoring. When they had Boudreau and it was going good for them, they had offensive explosions, and it didn't matter how many you scored on them, they'd be able to outdo you. They'd be able to outduel you. I'm just wondering, at what point in time do you change the philosophy of how it applies to going about your business? They don't want to be a physical team. They want to outskate you. They want to do things in a way that are different than that. But I think when we look at the teams that win, they're more physical. And I just wonder, is that the reason why they can't get to the next step, the next level?
The core of the young guns.
Can I say too? I mean, this is like another obvious point, but when you have a roster that three players on your team have demanded asked for a trade at least, and the goalie, your starting goalie, had some bad performances, got benched for what felt like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, came back, had a bad performance, and said that he's lost his confidence. That speaks to some kind of roster management issues, and I think if we saw this kind of stuff with the Redskins, it'd be DEFCON 1 for us. 3 players on the team asking for a trade, and a starting goalie saying he's lost his confidence because he got benched. I mean,
it's a good point. The difference is the Caps make the playoffs every year, though.
Well, but
that's a huge difference.
It's a good point, though. He's right. Katie Carrera's story the other day, and detailing some of that, really got into it's not team turmoil, but that
Those are still worse.
In hockey, you don't get guys speaking out like that as much.
Right.
In other sports, you do. Hockey, whatever, there's an omerta, there's a code, like, oh, we're in the locker, we'll keep this in the locker room.
Erod did that to get here in the first place, so it's not exactly,
that's true.
It's not new from his perspective.
Adam Oates did it to get out of St. Louis years ago.
I mean, it's definitely something to keep an eye on.